Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This is we're going over some of my favorite plays for today's 6-game NBA slate for tonight on Draftkings. And before we continue, if you could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPinell16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheets about every single night for the NBA season, my Slack chat, my cheat sheet, projections, all that good stuff, links all in the description below for my Patreon. And I say we get right into the video. And so just as general slate thoughts here, there's a lot of value on the slate. I mean, like a ton of value. So I do think that feel like stars and scrubs is a very viable option tonight. There is just so many mispriced guys here. They didn't get priced up from where they should be with guys being out. So we just have a ton of value on this slate, and then we got multiple spend up options. So if you want to go with 3 studs, I think that's fine. If you want to go with 2 studs, that's fine. But I mean, you can easily go stars and scrubs tonight because there's a ton of value. So anyway, let's start talking about these studs. First guy I want to talk about is James Harden at 10,800. And I know. He burned us last night and pretty much the game before with 52 and 39 fantasy points. They forgot to show up and play basketball in Miami last game. But hear me out here. Russell Westbrook is out for this game. He is getting a day off. So, and I don't know if you guys remember how good James Harden was last year when he was the only guy, especially when Chris Paul was out. It was insane. Every single night you pretty much had to play James Harden or you lost money. I do think we see a throwback performance here. Westbrook is leaving behind 35 minutes per game, 1.6 fantasy points per minute, and a 27% usage rate. Now, I'm not saying this is all going to go to James Harden, but it definitely helps him for sure. Last season, his usage rate was over 40% without Westbrook on the floor, and I'd expect more of the same considering it's at 39.9% right now, which is already insanely high, and it's probably going to go it's going to go above 40%. And his points per minute on the season sits around 1.5, but I expect that to get quite a bump as well in all categories here because Westbrook, was at around 1.6, and Harden's going to have to shoulder the load even more here without Westbrook running the floor as well. And even without Russ, the Rockets have a 120-point team total, which is the highest on the slate, and this game is the highest over/under in Vegas on the slate as well. So obviously we want players from this game. The other thing here is that this game will be played pretty fast. Rockets are playing the 4th fastest this year, and the Grizzlies are the 3rd fastest team so far. And they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league. So this is just a perfect storm for James Harden. He should be able to go off in this matchup. And remember, we got to have a short memory in DFS. And just because someone burnt you the day before or, past couple of days doesn't mean they're a bad play the next day. And, vice versa. So James Harden, he is my guy tonight. I'm going to load him up. I know he sucked the past 2 games, but I feel just fine putting in James Harden. No Russell Westbrook, it just makes too much sense. He's going to be very highly owned despite his poor performance last game out. Next guy I like is, I'm not saying you can't play Giannis. You can play Andre Drummond as well, but I'm not going to just talk about all the studs here. I think they're all in play. And like I said, it's very easy to fit multiple of these studs in. So if you want to play Giannis, that's perfectly fine. Minnesota plays pretty fast. If you want to play Drummond, that's fine. Washington's not the best. And, he's been an absolute monster this season without Blake Griffin. Westbrook is out. So let's talk, but I want to talk about Kyrie Irving at 9,500 going up against New Orleans. He logged his first triple-double of this season versus Detroit on Saturday, and he does a fantastic matchup and a high-paced matchup versus a New Orleans team who is playing the 6th fastest, just overall this season in terms of pace. And then Brooklyn is playing the 2nd fastest this year, so there will be plenty of shots going up, and not a lot of defense going on for either team. New Orleans has been awful when it comes to opposing point guards this season, giving up the most points per game to the position so far. Kyrie Irving has a 34% usage rate on the year, and he's at 1.6 points per minute with 34 minutes per game, which is pretty darn good. Now, Vegas doesn't have an over-under yet set. When I was doing this, they might be out now, but I would imagine it's one of the highest on the slate. And it's nice that he's also getting it done in other places than just scoring this year. So he's been a producer in the assist department and the rebounds. So I do like that. So he's not completely scoring dependent, although we need big scoring games out of Kyrie Irving to make him worth it, which, he typically does put up big scoring games. So he's offering us a double-double upside and occasionally the rare triple-double upside every single night now. So I do like Kyrie Irving quite a bit versus New Orleans. 11 rebounds, 4, 7, 7. I'll take that. 10, 10, 6, 7 for the assists. So Kyrie Irving, I think he gets you over 50 fantasy points tonight. I would feel pretty good about loading up on him in all formats. So I do like Kyrie Irving. Next thing I want to talk about is Ben Simmons at 8,500. So there's no Embiid, so Simmons becomes a pretty good option versus Phoenix at this price tag of 8,500. Both teams play pretty fast with both notching top 10 ratings in terms of pace of play. So I always like getting players in those types of games. And Embiid leaves behind a 33% usage rate and a 1.83 points per minute. So, it's pretty obvious. Other 76ers players would get some bumps here, and that includes Simmons. He actually almost had a triple-double last game, so I do like Simmons here against a below-average Suns defense. So I think he makes sense at 8,500. I don't know how much ownership he's going to have exactly, but I don't think he's that bad of an option whatsoever. I think he gets you over 45 points, which 8,500 we will take that. In the mid-range, there's not always a lot I like in the mid-range, but this time I actually think there's quite a few good options. I think we can look at Al Horford at 6,900. I think he's a fine option, and he would also make sense with Embiid being out. He's played pretty well when he's missed games so far. Versus Detroit, he had 44 points, then 39 versus Minnesota when he missed part of the game, and then he nearly had 50 versus Portland. So, and this is also another great matchup versus the Suns, who are the worst team in the league versus opposing big men. He should push for mid-30s minutes here, and he's been over a point per minute this year, especially with no Embiid. So I think he makes sense. I mean, if he gets 35 minutes and he's been over a point per minute versus Phoenix, which is a good matchup, and they play pretty fast, I think he has a 50-point ceiling in this matchup. So I don't mind using some Al Horford at 6,900. Also, don't mind another big man in Clint Capela at 6,200. So I do want pieces of this Houston game versus Memphis. And he should be another benefactor of no Russ. And not that they play the same position or anything, but there's just so much numbers to go around for the rest of the Rockets that Russell Westbrook's leaving behind. So Capela seems a little bit too cheaper with the expected bump. And none of these Rockets players were priced correctly with Westbrook being out. So, we'll take advantage of what we can. We've also seen some pretty big games from big men versus Memphis so far, so I don't mind taking a shot at Capela here. He's been over a point per minute, and he should see 30 minutes plus, probably in the mid-30s, especially with no Westbrook. So it's going to be a high-paced game, and he's had some two pretty bad games in a row, but he's only seen low 20s minutes. Earlier in the season, 37, 30, 30, 47, I'll take it. And I think he's going to get, about 32, maybe 35 minutes in this game. So Capela, I think he's worth a flyer there. Not someone that's a core player or anything, but I think he's a fine play. And next I want to talk about is Brandon Clark at 4,800 going up against Houston. So again, I want pieces of this game. And Clark stands out as one of the, probably one of the better mid-range / cheap options on the slate, with Jaren Jackson likely to miss this game. He's listed as doubtful. This bumps up Kyle Anderson and Brandon Clark as well. He's fresh off a 40-point outing versus Phoenix, and he should see close to, if not more than 30 minutes tonight. And on the year, he's been a 1.13 point per minute producer. So I think if we can get 30 plus points out of the guy, and that would make him an excellent option. I think he sees a little bit over 30 minutes, and that would, just as a basic projection, that would give him over 30 fantasy points with upside of 40. So Brandon Clark, I think he makes some sense, and I want pieces of this game. So he's a pretty good player. So I would take Brandon Clark at 4,800. Josh Richardson at 4,600. I think he makes some sense too today. Just another guy who sees a bump with no Embiid for the Sixers. He saw his usage rate around 23% last time out, and is seeing minutes in the mid-30s right now. He's been less than a fantasy point per minute producer. I think he's at 0.86 on the season, but that's fine with his minutes and bump in usage with no Embiid. So 4,600, I think he's a fine option versus Phoenix, who's obviously not the best defensive team in the world. He's been fine the past few games: 33, 26, 22, 33, 32. So I don't hate him. I think he's a fine play. I know he's really chalky the night before. That was just given the environment of the slate. But he'll probably have some ownership again, so I don't mind Josh Richardson. And then we can get into the value plays with, we got a ton. So I think the most obvious one on the slate is Gorgui Dieng at 3,300. He's just completely mispriced here. And it might be the easiest play of the slate, and he's basically free. Towns is dealing with a suspension, and Dieng drew the start for the T-Wolves last game and ended up getting 23 minutes, but also posted a monster 39 fantasy point outing. Is he going to do that every time? No, probably not, but he should see about 25 minutes here, and 30 fantasy points isn't out of the question. And if he does reach 30 fantasy points, that's like an insane 9x off of his salary. So that'd be great. That's what his projection is right now for me. I think I have him at 30 points right now, so he's the top value play on the slate for me right now. He should be popular, but it's for a good reason. And also, Minnesota plays at the highest pace of play in the season, and Milwaukee is top 10. So, Gorgui Dieng, I think he's the lock of the slate. He's just way too cheap for, he's a pretty good point per minute producer, 3,300. I'll take it. He's just way too cheap. I think we're going to have to play him tonight. Eric Gordon, I pretty much mention him in almost every single video, and he sucks almost every single time. But again, no Russell Westbrook. I know the guy's the brokest man alive right now, but he's sitting around 30 minutes per game, and I expect that to be in the mid-30s tonight without Russ, so we can't try to load up on him again. I love this game, and when a stud is out, we had to like the cheaper options that will try to fill that void. I know he's been awful this season, and he hasn't hit 3 in 2 games, but it's really only up from here. Just know he's a little bit risky because he's pretty much scoring dependent because he does absolutely nothing in other departments. Pretty much he has like no peripheral stats, maybe a rebound or assist per game. Maybe we get a lucky block or a steal. Other than that, we need him to hit threes, but he's going to have to take on more of the load with Russell Westbrook being out. So I think Eric Gordon, he would make some sense here. And then just to scrape the bottom of the barrel even more, some other mispriced guys. So Frazier and D Rose are out, which opens up minutes for Bruce Brown and Langston Galloway again at 3,200 apiece. So if we talk about Bruce Brown first, if I can find, 3,200. I think he's going to be popular. He showed out last game versus Brooklyn where he had 40 minutes and then 39 fantasy point outings. So it was basically a point per minute. And he had a 25% usage rate. So yeah, I'll take that all day at 3,200. I mean, I doubt he replicates that, and it's way too cheap but he's just way too cheap for someone who's going to see minutes in the 30s. And it's a good matchup versus Washington. So Bruce Brown, I think he makes some sense. And I mean, you have a lot of guys that are really, really cheap. So 3,200 Bruce Brown, 3,300 Dieng. I mean, it's just pretty easy to fit in studs tonight. So yeah, Bruce Brown, he makes some sense. And the same thing can be said for Langston Galloway, his teammate at 3,200. He didn't have as big of a game as Bruce Brown, but he did see 27 minutes and put up 20 fantasy points, which sounds like nothing compared to Bruce Brown, but it's still solid at his price tag, and he should see around 30 minutes again, and he's just way too cheap in my opinion. So Langston Galloway, I think he's another flyer that is worth a shot. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this video. We have plenty of value on this slate already, and we always know that news comes out right before the lock happens, so I'm sure there's going to be even more value that pops up. So it's really easy to fit in the high-end guys. I'm going to be starting my lineups with James Harden, and then I'll figure out the rest from there. James Harden, Gorgui Dieng, probably Bruce Brown or something like that. And then you can basically build whatever kind of lineup you want. So anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you with that. I'm sorry if I sound weird. I think my mouth is so dry right now. Anyway, I'll leave you guys with that. Wish you guys the best of luck. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Remember to leave a like and follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. And I'll see you guys in the next video.